Hello. So it's been a month since I had that guy, and I've really been wanting to kind of share my labor story because I totally didn't know that I was in labor for the first 6 hours, and it was really painful and very interesting. So the day that it happened, it was May 21st. We went to bed early, like around 9:30, 9:15, 9:30, and I woke up at 11:15 because I was like, I am peeing myself. I run to the bathroom, fully peed myself, change, shower, go to bed. Wake up 15 minutes later, the same thing happens. Obviously less pee. I was like, this is so weird. I was like, I can't control my bladder. Go back and clean up, go back into bed. Same thing happens 15 minutes later. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't remember if it happened 3 or 4 times, but I remember it was every 15 minutes. So at that point, I was like, okay, I hop onto Amazon. I get myself adult diapers. I was like, well, I have, 3 weeks left, and I guess I'm going to be just peeing myself now. Like, I have no control of my bladder. So I order 4 packs of diapers to last me. So I keep trying to go to bed, and it just wasn't happening. Like, I started getting really, really bad pain. I think maybe around 1 a.m. I was kind of crying, sitting on the toilet. I was like, there's literally no point for me to go back to bed. Every time I would go to bed and try to get into bed, I was doubled over in pain. So I was practically just sitting on the toilet. And when I was wiping, it wasn't blood, but it was very light pink. And I was like, okay, this is weird. But again, it wasn't my water breaking. I knew I peed myself. There was no weird smell. And I was having really bad stomach pain. But everybody I've heard from was saying you'd have really bad pressure on your vagina. The baby was pushing down. I wasn't feeling that. So I was feeling it in my stomach and I was feeling it in my back. So we try to time the contractions, and I'm convinced this is false labor. My body's just prepping because the day before I was having really bad hip pain, stretching, and so we're timing it, and it's just under a minute, and it's not really every 5 minutes. So, and my husband was supposed to go to a training he was leaving the house 5:30 a.m. and he wasn't going to be back until 11 p.m. or later. So he was, by hour 2 or 3, he goes, maybe we should go to the hospital. And I was like, I don't want to go to the hospital. If it's false labor, they're just going to send us home. I don't want to spend time in the hospital. But I was crying in pain. And then I started getting not to be gross, but diarrhea. And I've heard or read somewhere that was a labor sign. So everything we were looking up was well, it's either real labor or false labor. There's really no way to tell. It's very similar. But the one thing that I did pick up on was that if it was false labor and you shift positions or try to do a hot shower or something like that, the pain would subside. My pain really wasn't subsiding at all. I convinced Rich to go to sleep because he had that long training. And I was we were both kind of in denial. We're there's no way this is labor, but he was thinking something was wrong, and I was well, whatever, my body's just prepping. I was in serious denial. So I tried to take a warm shower, and I was Rich has this pillow for baths, so I was kind of doing the downward dog position. So I was leaning on this pillow, and I was trying to get this hot water on me, and it just wasn't subsiding. I was kind of screaming in pain. It was really bad. So I think by 5 a.m. I finally was we're either going to the hospital or he's leaving for the whole day. I was that's not gonna happen. So I was I think we should go to the hospital, because we started thinking something was wrong and we were really nervous. So he's okay, should I pack some stuff for us to use? And I was like, yeah. So I didn't have a hospital bag prepped, but thankfully I had a list. So he actually went to walk the dogs, and I was like kind of crawling around trying to collect this bag together. It was really insane. So around 5 a.m. we decide we're going to the hospital. Again, Rich went to walk the dogs. I'm like collecting this hospital bag. We leave the house, and we're both thinking like we're gonna go. They're gonna reassure us like everything's fine, and then they're gonna send us home. Like neither one of us are like, we're having a baby today. Not an option in our heads. Because it was also early. Like I was a day before 37 weeks. So we're like leaving the house, and the car was down the block, and I'm like in excruciating pain. Like I'm barely walking. Like I couldn't walk down 3 steps. Like I was feeling it. And Rich is like, just stay right here. I'm going to get the car. I was like, no, I can walk. He's like, no. Just like stay right here. So he goes to get the car. I'm like, there's like a gate by my building. I'm like hunched over. Like there was no way I was walking. The hospital ride, because it was so early, was like 15 minutes. I was kind of pretty much screaming in pain. Like I couldn't sit. I was like sitting sideways. My butt was kind of off the seat, and I was holding on to like the thingy, whatever, the handle, the mom panic handle that moms hold on to when, you know, you're driving and they panic. So I was holding on to that. And it was rough. So we get to the hospital, we're parking, and we're like now in this parking lot, and we don't know which way to go. And I'm like dying of pain. Like I couldn't walk. So we get to the hospital, and there's like this one couple in the waiting room, and this woman is sitting with a suitcase, totally chill. I'm like, she must be having a scheduled C-section. There's no way she's like in active labor right now. Like there's no way, because she was so chill, and I'm like dying. So we come and like start to check in, we're talking, whatever, and like I'm telling this lady like, oh, it's too early. She's like, no, like the babies come whenever they want. Like you're not even that early, you're super close, you know, if you get admitted, like, you know, asking all these questions, whatever. Gives me a little wristband and says, take a seat, like a nurse is gonna come get you. We sit, it was like maybe 5 minutes, if even. I was like, it felt like a year. So Rich, poor guy, is like calling because he had this training that now he can't go to, and he doesn't know who to call even. So he's trying to work that out, trying to like contact people and be like, hey, we're having this baby today, like this is the situation, kind of thing. And so we get to the hospital, so the nurse comes to get us, and we're both like kind of wide-eyed, like don't know what to do, don't know what to expect. And she's like, what number baby is this? And we're like, 1. She's like, okay. Like super chill. Like also it's like 6 a.m, like people aren't awake yet, like they're very chill, very lax. And so she kind of asks me what went on, and I was like explaining to her, and she goes, okay, like when something like that happens, you have to come in because you might have ruptured, like you're like leaking fluid, like you don't know what it is. And we're like, we were just kind of trying to be chill because we're like, oh, well, it wasn't 511, like it wasn't 1 minute contractions every 5 minutes for an hour. But then again, like I was in pain for 6 hours, so I was having contractions for 6 hours. So she's like, okay, she's like, I'm gonna test you and I'm gonna submit it, and like we're gonna see if you ruptured. I was like, okay. She checks me and she goes, oh, you're 4 centimeters dilated. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. And then she goes, do you want an epidural? And I'm like, I mean, bless you, honey, if I'm having the baby today, like I think she's like offering me this epidural for this pain that I'm having, like not registering like this baby is coming today. Because I know active labor is 6 centimeters, but I was like, I know people walk around like 1-2 centimeters, not 4. Like once it's at 4, it's quicker. Well, I don't know, I'll know for next time. So then I like go to the bathroom to pee, because again, like there's so much pressure, like I feel like I need to poop and pee like at all times, the whole time. So then like a clump falls out of me, and I'm like, oh my God, I just lost a blood clot. Like I start panicking. Rich is like, I'm pretty sure that's your mucus plug. I was like, oh, okay. So like I relax. Okay, great. Like that's fine. So then the nurse comes back and she, like, they hook me up to the monitor, and then this other nurse comes, and she was going to take me to the epidural room, or to get the epidural or whatever. And I'm like still not registering, like, this baby is coming today. So then the second nurse is like, do you want a wheelchair or will you walk? I was like, I can walk. I could not walk. She goes, are you sure? Like, you really look like you're having a lot of discomfort. Like, I don't know that you can walk. And I'm like, I can walk. She goes, I want to go get a wheelchair. Sorry, she leaves. Comes back. They put me in this wheelchair. They're taking me. Like, I thought we were going next door to get this epidural, or like to prep for the epidural if I need to get the epidural if I'm in labor. And like, we're literally going down this hall, around the corner, to a different city, different zip code. Like, it was far, and I'm literally like, there was no way I was walking this. I'm like, I thought we were going next door. And then nurse goes, and she was such a sweetheart and like so funny. She had a lot of personality, so she was great. Like, she was with me until I started pushing, and then it was change of shifts. But she was like, yeah, I could tell like you weren't gonna walk this, so I just made an executive decision. I was like, thank you, because like I there was no way. So anyway, we get to this other room, and this is the labor and delivery room. Like, I don't know this. So the nurse comes and she goes, okay, mama, like, let me get your bracelet, because they're swapping out bracelets, because the first one is for triage, and that's like, you're just in the hospital, and then the next one is like, okay, you're having this baby. And I was like, oh, does this mean I'm getting admitted? And she goes, I'm sorry, did you not realize you're having this baby today? And I was like kind of like, I thought we're still waiting for the results of this swab she took. Like, I thought that if I'm leaking fluid, they're admitting me. I didn't realize, like, you're in labor, period. Rich kind of looked at me like I was nuts. I was like obviously in blackout pain. Like, I had no idea what was flying. So pretty much I was like, oh, I'm like, okay, so we're having this baby today. Cool. And it was like 9 a.m. And by that time, like at 6 a.m., I like texted my managers, and I was just like, hey, I'm in the hospital and I'm 4 centimeters dilated. I am likely getting admitted. The like emphasis on the word likely. Like, I was in literal denial. I still can't get over it. So anyway, so then they start to prep me for this epidural. Goodness, that is a scary process, but my god, those drugs are fire. Like, highly recommend. I was like, oh, I'm gonna see how I feel. No, I did not see how I feel. I felt for 6 hours. I did not want to feel anymore. So I got the epidural like figure 9, stopped feeling any contractions, stopped feeling anything at all, like, and then around 2 p.m., like, it started to wear off, and they needed to come back and give me more. So, and then like the baby was head down, like, he was ready, but the problem is, like, once it was time to push, he was sunny side up, so it made it a little, like, well, not a little, but that much harder to push him out. So I started pushing around 6:10, and it was just like not happening. Like, first of all, I did not know how to push. I like totally didn't know what I was doing. They were trying to explain it to me. I'm just, I don't know, brain dead. Like, I just wasn't getting it. I was just not grasping. I was also obviously in pain, and it wasn't happening. So they were like, oh, this is practice pushing. And then, like, I think there was like a disconnect with the contractions, because like when I was feeling contractions, they were like, this might not be a contraction. So I think we were missing some contractions. But anyway, so I was pushing, and it was like nothing was happening. And they're like, you've been, like, at that point I was pushing like close to 2 hours, like probably an hour and a half. They're like, okay, like, you're getting to the 2 hour mark. Like, this really isn't safe. We're gonna vacuum him out. And like, she starts giving me these disclosures like, oh, well, your baby can have a, like, essentially telling me like all this stuff, like, he can come out with like, I forgot the word she was using, but like a laceration on his head, or like bruising, and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't want that. Like, I don't want to use the vacuum. I just want to push him out. And they're like, well, you know, it's like kind of getting dangerous, and like he's right there, so like at that point there was like no C-section as an option. And they're like, we need to help you, kind of thing. And I was like, okay, let me try. She's like, okay, if you want to try, we can give it a little more time. So then we started getting like, you know, time is just like quickly passing and passing. Like my heart rate is up, his heart, like the baby's heart rate was really high. And they were like, this isn't good, like just, we have to do something. So I was like, okay. So then they really actively tried to get me to push, and then I think like around hour 3 it started getting better, because I pushed him out at 9:37, and like I'd say from 9 to 9:37 is when I had those like really good pushes where they were like, okay, we'll give you some more time. But it was like there were 9 people in the room. There were 4 doctors for me, 4 doctors for my son, because again, A, he's technically preemie, B, his heart rate was so high, we were pushing for so long, so he had to be seen. So there's 9 people, right? So like my husband, 4 doctors for me, 4 doctors for my son. Everybody's yelling in my face, push, you're doing great, stop this, don't do this, like screaming in my face, like not helpful, like trying to be helpful, obviously. And there were some points where I would just want to be like, just, can you stop yelling at me? Like, I don't do well with yelling. It makes me very, very uncomfortable. But they were trying to be supportive, and I know they were, and I did, like, I didn't snap, obviously, but I was so close to just being like, okay, can we, like, just take it easy? And my husband was watching the whole thing happening. He was, like, kind of sideways, where he was, like, helping me and watching this child come out of me. Bless you. It was very overwhelming, but... and painful. I don't know, the epidural, like I know they say you feel pressure, whatever, the epidural was wearing off. It was painful. He was sunny side up, like I couldn't get him out. It was bad. And then at some point, like I couldn't even breathe, so every time I had to like push and breathe in and breathe out, I couldn't really breathe out and catch that next breath because my nose was stuffed. So I had to kind of like exhale twice and then breathe, and it was like all happening so quick because I really wanted to push him out and I didn't want him to get vacuumed out. So it was like very high intensity and very high pressure, and like my jaw was hurt, like everything was hurting. They're like, don't push in your face, push like you need to poop. And I'm like, I don't know what this means. I'm on so many drugs. Oh, also around 2 o'clock my water broke, like actually broke. And sometime later, once I started pushing, like I had like a high fever and an infection or whatever, so they gave me like 3 different medications on top of this epidural, and I'm just like so drugged. But yeah, so I pushed him out. Basically he was like right there, but they were telling me he was right there for like an hour, and my husband kept telling me, I can see him, I can see him. They see his hair. Still has a full head of hair. The doctor at one point goes, do you want to feel his head? I'm like, I really don't. Like I had no interest in this at all. Like I just wanted my baby, like fully, not touch his head while it's there, like no. So then I'm like getting him out, and they're like, okay, and like, and then they tell me, oh, your baby might be stunted. I was like, what does that mean? They're like, oh, well, because you're pushing so long, he might not cry, but don't be alarmed. Like, not helpful. He cried. He was fine. He was not stunted. And he was like right there. We got his head out, and she got like one shoulder out, and she goes, I'm just gonna help you. Clip. And I heard her cut me. Because again, like it's better if they cut you, because they'll cut you at an angle instead of you just tearing. Yeah, and then they were... So I didn't get the baby right away because they had to like make sure he's okay, and then they were stitching me up. I got 5 stitches, and I remember being like, do I have to push the placenta out? She's like, no, I'll get it out for you, and she gets it out for me. And I like, they're stitching me up, whatever, and I think it was before they started stitching me up, I was like, I can feel your hand in my stomach. She's like, that's exactly where it is. Can you imagine? Like whole hand, I felt her in my stomach. It was so weird. But she stitched me up, and it was very crazy. And that was my story, and it was really intense, but I have this magical little creature now, and he's a whole month old. And it was quite the experience. But epidural, highly recommend. Also, labor doesn't feel the same for everybody. So if you're feeling pain, maybe go get checked out. Even if you get sent home, it might be better than just suffering and not knowing what's going on. But yeah, anyway.